This week, we welcome Sandy Carielli, VP Principal Analyst at Forrester Research, to discuss why technology leaders must work together to prepare for Q-Day. In the Leadership and Communications segment, the cybersecurity reckoning, how CISOs are preparing for an era of AI-driven threats and quantum disruption. Should I stay or should I go? Are legacy metrics derailing your transformation? And more. Business Security Weekly starts now.
This is a Security Weekly production for security professionals by security professionals. Please visit securityweekly.com/subscribe to subscribe to all the shows on our network.
It's the show where we explore the business of security to improve the security of business. Your trusted source for actionable insights on leadership, communication, and innovation. Get ready for Business Security Weekly. Right now, with Tanium, IT and security teams complete patching programs in minutes, not weeks. Reduce software vulnerabilities by up to 97%. Cut incident response times by up to 99%. This is not just IT, this is autonomous IT. Making business, your business, unstoppable. Tanium, autonomous IT, unstoppable business. See more at securityweekly.com/Tanium. Ever feel like your network infrastructure is stuck in the past? Meet Meter, the company reimagining what it means to get and stay online. Meter delivers full stack networking, wired, wireless, and cellular, all in one seamless, scalable, and secure solution. From hardware design and firmware to software deployment and support, Meter streamlines every part of your network while giving you all the control and transparency you need. Whether you're managing a branch office, retail stores, or a massive data center, Meter gives you performance, reliability, and the visibility you need to stay in control. Thanks to Meter for sponsoring. Go to securityweekly.com/Meter to book a demo now. That's securityweekly.com/Meter, METER. Welcome to Business Security Weekly. This is episode number 434, recorded February 9th, 2026. The Super Bowl's over. I'm your host, Matt Alderman, and my co-host, Jason Albuquerque, is sad.
Very sad day. Very sad day. It's okay. It gives me hope. We went from a 4-win season last year to 14 this year and a Super Bowl run. And all we have to do is shore up that offensive line, man. We're gonna be in it to win it next year.
There you go. Being positive after a loss.
100%.
Yeah, exactly.
I cried for a hot minute. Now it's on, LFG. Let's do this next year.
All right, there we go. Also joining me for this interview segment, my second co-host, Mr. Ben Carr. Hey, Ben, welcome.
Hey, Matt. Tried to wear a little blue today for the Seahawks. Didn't have the neon green, but wanted to rub Jason's face in it just a little bit. Not that I'm much of a football guy, but I just like giving him a hard time.
When the rest of y'all can count to 6, let me know.
And last but not least, Summer Fowler. Some Pittsburgh jabs in there somewhere, Summer?
No need for that. We'll just talk about the Olympics for a second. And it was quite a weekend. I mean, my heart goes out to Lindsey Vonn, but it was fun watching so many other things that happened with the skating, some of the speed skating stuff, and of course, hockey starts this week. So we don't have the NHL, but we're going to have Go USA. And of course, I'll cheer for some other teams, just the players on them. But that's exciting. I also went curling over the weekend.
Wow.
And that was super, super fun. So, and it's definitely not easy. Those rocks are heavy.
I bet they are. Did you get out the kitchen broom and...
No, and I did ask if they would teach me to swear in any Scandinavian languages, but they didn't help me out there. So if anybody wants to, send me some Scandinavian swear words in social media, I'd like to know them.
Summer, you could ask ChatGPT, but it probably won't respond.
We're not on speaking terms, Matt. Long story for the audience, but ChatGPT and I are not on speaking terms.
Yeah, we got that preview before the interview. Yes, little lover squirrel. All right, one quick announcement before we get into the interview. Security Weekly listeners save $100 on their RSAC 2026 All Access Pass. RSAC 2026 conference will take place March 23rd to the 26th at the Moscone Center in San Francisco. As usual, to register using our discount code, please visit securityweekly.com/RSAC26 and use the code 56U5SecWeekly. I'll be there. I hope some of the rest of you will be there. We'll see you there. Broadcast Alley, Moscone West, as usual. Sandy advises security and risk professionals on application and product security with a particular emphasis on the collaboration among security and risk, product management, application development, operations, and business teams. Her research covers topics such as proactive security design, protecting modern and emerging application architectures, protection of applications in production environments, and embedding security through the product lifecycle. Sandy, welcome back to Business Security Weekly.
Oh, thank you very much. Thanks for having me, Matt. Good to see you all.
I think you were the first Forrester analyst we brought onto the Security Weekly a long time ago. It was ASW when we were on ASW. I think you're one of the first, and then we brought a lot of other Forrester analysts on. We have a great relationship with the Forrester analysts. We love having you guys on to talk about your research.
And we love being on, and I work with cool people, so I'm glad you got the chance to discover a lot of them.
Yes, thank you. So we're going to talk about Q-Day. Quantum's coming. We've been hearing this for a while. Kind of give us the latest. Like, where are we with the kind of the proposed timeline for Q-Day?
Yeah, it's interesting because we've been talking about Q-Day for years. And if you go back to 2015, 2016, we started the process of developing post-quantum algorithms in preparation for it. And quantum computers have continued to develop, but no one can put a timeline on this is exactly the date. That said, we've seen advances, and not just in the obvious ways. It's not just about more qubits, but it's about more efficient algorithms, more efficient use of quantum computers, different approaches that might bring the dates closer in. At the same time, what we're seeing is a regulatory element take hold. Pretty much every country in the world in the last year or two has put forth guidelines by which organizations selling into the government, working with the government, have to have migrated to the post-quantum algorithms. So that added a real level of urgency that maybe didn't exist before. And so when you put all of that together, you start to look at 2030 as this very important, we really need to target being ready by then. And that's kind of where we're at. Do we know for certain that quantum computers are going to be able to break RSA and ECC by that date? No, but we do think it's fairly close to that. And we are adding the regulatory guidelines in that element to add some assurance to our plans and to our timelines.
So is that the beginning of 2030 or the end of 2030?
I would say it's probably, when I look at plans from organizations that have published a roadmap, Microsoft's been pretty aggressive about publishing their roadmap. They actually plan to be mostly done by 2029. They're not taking any chances. And that's an important element when you think about it, because this is like a lot of other things we do, very third party and embedded component and partner dependent. So yeah, there are the things that you can control, but then there are all the third-party libraries and all of the software and services that you bring in and everything you do with partners and all of that. So there's the layers upon layers of third-party risk and dependencies that come into play.
Yeah. We're going to talk
So Sandy, for leaders, right? I mean, we're looking at a 4 to maybe 6, 8 year window here, right? That something's bound to happen. A lot of times CISOs trying to get budget allocation in preparation for things struggle to get a budget for next year. Right. How do we start getting our leadership, our board, our CEOs, our CFOs to start thinking 5 years ahead from now to be able to prepare, right? Because, I mean, I don't see this as a light switch that we're going to be able to flip in 2029 to be ready for 2030. How do we start convincing folks to start budgeting now?
Yeah, it's a great point, Jason. And yeah, it's not a light switch. The reason we started so early, even in developing these algorithms, is that we knew it was going to take a while. And even at this point, organizations are going to have to prioritize which systems they migrate first in order to be ready, because this is a long-term thing. But I think there are a couple of pieces of this. One, I think the regulatory timelines really help because it puts this due date out there that people have to be prepared for. Two, starting to explain some of the realities of things like harvest now, decrypt later, and the fact that even data that's harvested today, whether that's financial data, credit card data, healthcare data, customer data, PII, etc., all of that, if it's not encrypted with post-quantum algorithms, it's susceptible to harvest now, decrypt later. That's a message that resonates. So the combination of, things are still at risk now, even if a quantum computer doesn't exist yet, and the regulatory aspect is coming, the government guideline aspect is coming, that helps put forth that urgency. The other thing that I'll say, honestly, and I've been pleasantly surprised about this, the number of client inquiries that I have gotten from end users about quantum security, the eagerness, the interest in learning about it has been kind of nice. Like, organizations are getting on board. They're curious about it.
Yeah, Sandy, I want to ask about the harvest now, decrypt later, right? Like that's been something I've actually been talking about for a little while now because I've had some concerns around this. And I'm wondering where you think this all comes out, especially in terms of people who, felt maybe they didn't need to report an issue or an incident. And then we see, quantum break and potentially all that information is now feasibly decryptable, right? Like what do you think happens in the look back time frame, essentially, right? Like, is that going to be a thing, or does the data just it's not so concerning because of how long the look back period is? Like, what do you think?
I mean, the look back period goes back, as far as any data has been traversing the internet, right? And to some extent, anything that is already gone, the horse has left the barn. There's nothing you can do after something has been harvested to protect it after the fact. So, even if a quantum computer, comes into play and is viable in, say, 5 to 7 years, things that were stolen last year, the year before, I don't expect that we're going to have a lot of, I guess, fines or reporting or something along those lines, although hard to say. But I do think there's going to be a notion of, were we responsible in protecting what we could when we could? And in prioritizing that. I think as organizations go through their environments, Ben, they have to look at what customer data is going to be relevant 5 years from now. Let's say a quantum computer can break RSA in 2030. Let's say that were the date that actually happened. If I bought something online and paid by credit card and my credit card details are exposed 5 years later, well, my credit card's probably changed since then. I can deal with that. New credit card number, not an issue. If I log into my doctor's office and I get the results of blood work, that stuff still matters. And that matters 5 years, 10 years, 15 years down the road. So I think there has to be some prioritization about the type of data that's being harvested in order to protect people. But I don't know what happens with stuff that's going, exposed that maybe was harvested 10 years ago.
Yeah.
Sandy, let's tell the doc. Oh, go ahead, Ben.
I just say there is data that was potentially harvested years ago that could still be valuable, right? And I think
absolutely
the message for anybody in security or the C staff right now is, if you're not doing something now moving forward, the longer you wait, the more culpable you are, right? In the fact that you didn't take due care.
I think that's valid. Yeah, absolutely. I think that's why they put in place the guidelines for migration that they did. Because if you don't do that and data is harvested after the fact, even if a quantum computer isn't ready yet, you're potentially more culpable.
Sandy, I was going to say, let's tell everybody that we're going back to paper-based medical records and you have to carry a folder from doctor to doctor.
Oh,
it's so exciting.
That'll go well.
Look, none of it's going to be fun, Summer, but I mean, I think it's very likely that a lot of my medical information is going to be out there. I'm sure that my doctor's office is not using post-quantum to protect my interactions.
Right.
So I have a couple of things on this. I was thinking about, part of this is, you've got to do the basics. Like, I always come back to the basics, and companies today just do so poorly with the basics that if we get into like real data management, that's going to help us get to where we need to be when Q Day arrives. However, I think, Ben, you made a great point. We have to be able to show that we're starting this activity now so that later on we can say, hey, we did this. And Sandy, the article mentions something really interesting about procurement being the gatekeeper.
Yes.
So what do you think is the right, like, minimum viable product that you need? Because we're making contracts now with organizations for the next 5 years. We're passing Q Day. So what should they be telling us now? What do we need to see? What should that procurement package include from a Q standpoint?
That's a great question. And you kind of bring up why I felt it was important to include procurement in that list of members of the team, because they do play such an important role. But I look at it as procurement's got to be involved early, because they need to be putting in their RFPs, what's your timeline for addressing post-quantum requirements? How soon are you going to be migrated? Are there any systems that aren't going to be? Are there any dependencies or partnerships? How are you, when are you going to be ready, so that the organization can decide, okay, we either need to go in another direction, or we need to add some additional controls, some additional mitigation, so that we can handle this. And it may be that the answer to some of this summer, if you've got some legacy systems in there and they're not going to be ready in time, that might be where you start to look at cryptographic agility solutions and proxies and layer it over some of that. But you need to be able to know that early and make the decision. So a lot of it is being proactive, knowing what you have. And I guess the other side of it is making sure that as your development and infrastructure team is doing all this work, you don't go out and buy something that's not ready and introduce more risk into the system late in the game.
Yeah, so you brought up kind of where I want to go a little bit, right? Because as an industry, we're pretty bad at knowing what our inventory is. So we kind of have this blind spot, right? Like, where do we start? Well, we start with our inventory. Well, we don't have good inventory. I mean, that's where it starts, though, right? I mean, we have to understand what systems we have in place that have these cryptographic algorithms, such that we can look at them and prioritize which system should we think about, because that's going to tie into your internal track, but also the external part with procurement and your partners and everything else. And I think about this from a third-party vendor risk perspective, which we're also pretty bad at as an industry. And I'm like, we've got these two kind of like things we don't do very, very well, kind of front and center when it comes to quantum and getting ready for Q Day. So, I'm just thinking, like, how do we gotta change the mechanism here, don't we? Like, we have to do something. And I think this ties into Jason's point earlier. Like, how do we get people to actually get started?
I mean, here's the thing, Matt, just to kind of tether into that a little bit. I love the fact that you listed out all of these key stakeholders. But when I started to look at it, I asked the question of, why aren't data owners in that list? Right? Because at the end of the day, they're the ones that are going to help us classify the data, prioritize around risk, right? They're key stakeholders for me that are going to be the intel that we need around where the data sits, what systems it lies in, the priority of the data, help us assess the risk of the data, be our evangelist when we're going to sit in front of the board and the CEO, because we can't make the same mistake of putting this burden entirely on the CISO. We can't. We've done that in the past. We're starting to make waves now with AI to say, hey, we can't all just, CISOs can't do this by ourselves. But this is that next phase of, it takes a village. And we need those data owners to be there with us side by side, making the case.
Yeah, I think data owners will definitely play a pretty strong role in this. They may be the folks that the CISO or the data security lead reaches out to, brings in their expertise. They may ultimately be added to the core team depending on different areas. You sort of want to start with your core folks, and then I expect we're going to branch out from there. But I mean, to your point, and to Matt's point, knowing what we have is a huge obstacle right now. And if you had asked me a few years ago about where to start, as an analyst, I wouldn't have had a good answer, because we didn't have a lot of options for discovery and inventory. The answer would be, well, there's Microsoft Excel. Use a spreadsheet and start listing stuff out. That is not a great answer for something this extensive, especially when you start to think about your infrastructure, your applications, your third parties, all that stuff. There are starting to emerge some cryptographic discovery tools, both by startups and larger well-known providers, that are starting to automate this. And I think as you start to adapt and adopt some of those, you'll start to get a better view of what's in your environment. But that's going to be a process as well. When I talk to practitioners about it, what they say is, you may have to start with discovery in a more narrow part of your environment and then gradually iterate and expand out. So maybe you think about which part of the environment is the most critical. To your point, Jason, what data, what applications, what systems have the most risk, have the most urgency, do the discovery there, and then start to build your way out. It's an ongoing discovery and prioritization exercise. So like everything else that we do, it's not going to be easy and it's going to be iterative, but yeah, we need as many people as possible at the table, and we need to start now.
Hey, Matt, I smell a say easy, do hard post-quantum world.
Yeah, sounds like it. Because, because again, we have bad inventory. So how do we do this? So having tools start to emerge that can help us start to inventory this stuff, I think is a huge advantage. Then I prioritize, I get it. Do we have enough post-quantum algorithms available to start to move towards, right? Like, okay, I find it, I get it. Like, can I actually remediate yet?
Yes, you can. NIST has approved a total of 4 algorithms so far. I believe 1 for key exchange, 3 for signing. They continue to evaluate a number of others. In other countries, there are other algorithms that are being explored as well. The NIST algorithms are being adopted by many countries, but not all of them. So there's that element also that's going to make some of this fun. South Korea, for example, is going in a completely different direction with respect to the algorithms they're adopting. So there are a number of algorithms, and they have been approved. There are accepted implementations of, I think, 3 of them today, and I think they're working on the 4th. So you could start to adopt them. The thing you have to be cognizant of, though, is that none of these have been out in the world for 20 years. None of these have stood the test of time. I would argue that we've gotten spoiled by RSA a little bit. Because RSA has lasted since the 1970s. I mean, this thing's been around now for almost 50 years, and we've gotten used to being able to rely on it. Yeah, we have to change key sizes, but we haven't had to make a major shift. We need to be prepared that at some point, either through classical cryptanalysis or because of a quantum computer, some of these post-quantum algorithms may not stand the test of time. And that means that we have to be prepared as part of our remediation to implement cryptographic agility. Because what we don't want is to implement one of these, and then in 5 or 10 years, it's discovered to be vulnerable, and we have to go through the same exercise all over again. Nobody wants to do this more than once. So we need to add the agility in there so that we can make shifts if there are changes.
So Sandy, can you dig deeper into that for just a minute? Because I took a note on that in the report. And I love the fact that it was positioned as, something that we can use as a competitive advantage, because we've been talking about security being leveraged as a competitive advantage. Talk to me about cryptographic agility being used as a competitive advantage, especially if it's going to change, if it could change so quickly.
Yeah, this is one of my favorite topics, Jason. Thank you.
I love it.
Look at it this way. We're doing this entire very large exercise among our developers, our infrastructure team, various technology leadership folks in order to inventory and prioritize and implement. And it's taking a lot of time from other work we may be doing. So what happens if in 5 or 10 years we have to do this again? The organization that designed for crypto agility, that implemented for crypto agility, maybe they're able to transition to the next algorithm in a matter of weeks or maybe a month. And then the organization that did it, maybe that's months or years. So it comes down to, from a competitive advantage, where are you spending your time? Where are you spending your innovation cycles?
Yeah.
I think this is a really important note for CISOs listening right now and others who are listening as well. When you're reporting this out to your executive staff and board, you probably don't want to be reporting this as a project metric, because a project assumes that it comes to an end, whereas this crypto agility is really about what you're discussing, Sandy, that it's the ability to handle these changes. So I think this is going to be an interesting, how do I express to my board our readiness? Because it's the crypto agility. I would love to explore that more, maybe not in the next 5 minutes, but in another discussion, because I think it's really important.
I agree, Summer. It's probably one of the most interesting things that I get to look at in this whole challenge, because it's one thing to let's go migrate to the next thing. We've all been through that before. But actually future-proofing this, God, wouldn't that be awesome?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, because we don't know what the next limitation is. No. We won't, right? It'll just get bigger and bigger and bigger. And so if I don't design for being able to swap these things out, we could be in this cycle every 5 to 10 years where we have to do major infrastructure upgrades, which also we're not very good at.
And also it's not just designing for ourselves. It's making sure that our ecosystem is designed for it as well. Mm-hmm. Our third-party vendors, is there language or clauses within our agreements with third-party vendors that test their cryptographic agility? And they can prove it. Like, how do we have our vendors prove their level of agility and their maturity?
And that's why you need the procurement folks and the third-party risk folks at the table for all of this. Yep.
Yeah. Absolutely.
I think we could have a virtual world where it's similar to dog agility tests. And maybe we can have like vendor crypto agility tests. And we run everybody through that.
I will have my beagle attempt to go through the hoop. It's not going to end well.
The New York Crypto Show.
Yes, that's right. It'll be an alt halftime show instead of the Puppy Bowl. We'll have crypto agility.
Yeah. Crypto agility. And
I'm looking forward in 2 years to all the Super Bowl commercials being that.
Yes.
All the Super Bowl commercials will be about crypto agility. It'll be great.
It'll be great. It'll be led by, IBM and Forrester or something like that. You guys will be out there talking crypto agility or something. Because then you need somebody to actually test the crypto agility. So who's gonna play that role? Yeah.
Now there's going to be a lot of work here, but if we do this right, if we plan this, if we think this through, we can start to protect our customers now. And that's the important thing.
That's a big if, though, Sandy.
Comes back.
Like I haven't seen that track record actually manifest itself. If we do that asset management well, if we do that vulnerability patching well, like it's a track record of non-performance.
Let me give you some silver linings here, Ben.
Make me feel better.
It's not all bad. We are seeing a lot of the CDNs and cloud providers get ahead of this. So a lot of those vendors have already implemented post-quantum for a lot of their external communications, a lot of their customer data handling. So if you're using, say, Cloudflare CDN or something like that, a good portion of your communications are already protected. So some of the big vendors are getting ahead of this. As I said, Microsoft has their whole roadmap out there. Mm-hmm. Google's done a lot in this space. AWS has roadmap information out there. So one silver lining is that some of the spaces where you could potentially be really vulnerable, the vendors that own those spaces are getting ahead of this.
Yeah, but it does sound like you're leaving kind of this gap that I think we've seen before in a lot of instances, right? Where the larger vendors have the time, the money, and the experience to play, but we all rely on this long tail of third-party chain, right? Where you could have one very small vendor that just doesn't have the ability to stay up on it, but they put you at great risk because you have a dependency.
I will say that that's where some of the cryptographic agility tools have me a little encouraged, because you can add the proxy in front of the legacy tool. And if your legacy tool can't do it, basically what you're doing with some of these cryptographic agility tools is you're shifting the cryptographic functionality outside the tool and into the proxy. And that's what allows you to upgrade to the latest algorithms. Is it going to be perfect in all cases? Of course not, because it never is. But it does, that architecture does add some level of flexibility for people. So that's, if someone came to me and said, I've got 3 systems or vendors that they're not going to be ready in time. They can't upgrade. They haven't been upgraded since the 1980s. That's what I would say to them. Look at cryptographic agility vendors, put the proxies in front of them, and move the cryptography there.
Great advice. Sandy, thank you so much for joining us on Business Security Weekly.
Thanks for having me, folks.
This episode is brought to you by Adaptive Security, the first cybersecurity company backed by OpenAI. AI has fundamentally reshaped the threat landscape. Today, the greatest risk isn't someone breaking into your systems, it's someone breaking into your trust. Deepfake voices join in your video calls. AI-crafted phishing emails that perfectly mimic your executives. Even synthetic job applicants entering through the front door. Adaptive Security is designed to counter these new realities. The company delivers real-time attack simulations that show security teams exactly what modern AI-driven threats look and sound like, and prepares them to respond effectively. Learn more at securityweekly.com/adaptive. Zero trust is clearly the future as threats get faster, quieter, and harder to detect. But implementing it shouldn't disrupt the business. Threatlocker enforces default denied execution in a way that remains enterprise-ready, scalable, and operationally clean. Unknown software is stopped cold, trusted apps stay contained, and drift is locked down across the environment. It's zero trust that works in real enterprises and prepares you for the threats ahead. See why CISOs are adopting it at securityweekly.com/threatlocker. All right, before we get into this week's articles, one quick announcement, and then we'll dig in. Most security conferences talk about threats. Zero Trust World lets you attack them. From March 4th to 6th, 2026 in Orlando, Florida, this hands-on cybersecurity event features live hacking labs where you'll break real environments, think like an adversary, and learn how attacks really work. You also get expert sessions, real-world case studies, CPE credits, and networking with top practitioners. And yes, the Security Weekly team will be there too. Don't miss it. Register today at securityweekly.com/ZTW, as in Zero Trust World. All right. So I did pull in a couple quantum articles to start off this section because I wanted to give people some reference to the previous conversation we just had with Sandy, right? Which is, how do we prepare for this quantum disruption? And I think this first article I brought in talks about both AI-driven threats and quantum disruption, because when you think about what's happening with AI, quantum adds a whole additional layer to this that I don't know that many people have thought about.
Yeah, because one data protection, fire drill isn't enough. We need another one, right?
Right, we need two.
I mean, honestly, it's the pressures that are mounting, right? And it's only getting more impactful, more high risk, and like Sandy was saying earlier, it's going to be changing rapidly. Can you imagine? I mean, we have to be thinking about new algorithms every 2, 3, 5 years, maybe.
Right.
As things become obsolete. So this is more high stakes at this point. And it's another pressure that the CISOs have on them. And I said it earlier, the burden cannot solely fall on the CISO. It cannot. We will not survive. As organizations, as a role, as a security team, this needs to be a team sport. I know it sounds cliche, but it has to be a team sport.
Did you just advocate for a chief quantum officer? Tell me you did not do that.
I don't think
no, but I think you're right, Jason. Like, this and part of this is going to be the CISO explaining why this is needed.
Yeah.
And so this is a challenge for the CISO to go in to the exec staff, to the board, and to make the plea that you just did in a way that is meaningful to them.
Yep. No, agreed. There are going to be challenges though. Because if we're knee-jerk and we overinvest in something that we consider quantum safe, quantum agile, and then we lock ourselves into these vendors that we can't get out of later, and the truth becomes known, and they aren't agile, and they can't change, and they can't keep up with the times, there's going to be risk here. And there are going to be organizations who knee-jerk react, and they embed themselves and align themselves with organizations that aren't scalable. So we have to be careful. This is very complex, and there's high risk here.
Yeah, it's interesting as we were talking through this in the last segment, Jason, you brought up the data side of this, which obviously the data side of this hits the AI side of this as well. And we were talking a lot about crypto agility towards the end, right? Because if I'm going to spend all this time and effort to figure out how to better protect my data, both from an AI and from the post-quantum world, then making sure that we're building these systems to be flexible and easy to change later are conversations we need to start having now.
Absolutely. But we have to, my point earlier was we have to get the rest of the organization on board.
Yeah.
We struggle to get budget today. Can you imagine sitting in front of a CFO and a CEO saying, I need budget to prep us for 5 years from now? Right. It's going to be a hard conversation.
I know.
We can't get budget for next year. So things have to change. That's why I'm saying the team, the data owners are an important piece to that team we were talking about in the last segment. I think that's a very important piece because not only do they know where the risk lies, they are the evangelists stepping up with us.
Yeah. Well, you've got to get buy-in, right? Like you've got to get a collaboration of people coming together for the same common purpose. And so I think that's one of the things CISOs have to realize is you've got to be an advocate for yourself, not just at the C-level, but with the other people in the org, right? To bring that forward for common goals and success.
Right. Yeah.
I think another one is, we often talk about being really good partners and friends with the CFO, leaning on the chief legal officer or folks in the legal department to explain what Ben was talking about earlier, that you need to start showing that you are addressing this now so that in 4 years, when, we know what hits the fan, you can say, we were thinking about this. We were making the moves. Now, nobody's going to get it perfect, but you really want to start showing this plan now.
Yeah, I didn't get into it in the last segment, but the type of data that needs to be protected now is the type of data that's still relevant 5 years from now, right? So Sandy said it, right? It's not the credit card data because I can change the credit card number easy. It's health records and it's a lot
financial
of data. Financial data.
Financial data, contracts.
Tied to you as a human that lasts longer than 5 years, which is all your health and financial stuff, right? That's where the focus should be. And, that's what I hope all the banks and all the healthcare companies are working on, which is how to protect all of that data, because that's the data that's probably the most urgent.
Yeah, I mean, the next article that you have here kind of teases into that a little bit, right? It talks about financial services and healthcare sectors being at the most risk.
Right.
Right. Yeah. But it also talks about what we were just saying, that this needs to be a board level governance conversation, not a technical conversation. A board level, C-level.
Yeah, this is a business level problem, right? It's not. It's got technical foundation, but it really is a business level problem.
Yep.
Yeah. Yes. So with all that pressure on you, should you stay or should you go?
I mean, history from the last 12 months says CISOs are starting to fly the coop and become consultants. So I don't know. This may be a catalyst for even more.
Right. I mean, think about this, right? So we went through all the personal kind of liability stuff with the SEC, which has all kind of resolved itself. But now I got all this AI stuff coming. I got all this quantum stuff coming. It's like, man, I don't know. Maybe I should just go retire somewhere.
Listen, I mean, at the end, business leaders that are not the CISO, give the CISO some level of authority and accountability and ability to enforce change and be able to make change. That's the power that the CISO needs to be able to make the changes that need to be made, be able to make the impact that needs to be made.
Yeah.
CISOs are leading because all the pressure's there, all the liability's there, but they have no power to make change. So they're flying the coop.
Yep.
Yeah. I would note. Oh, go ahead, Matt.
I was just going to say, I think what Debbie did in this article, right, which is just identify some of those red flags and how to kind of look at your environment, look at the culture, look at how the rest of the leadership is treating security and these topics to decide whether you should stay or go. So it was kind of interesting how she kind of laid out these different red and green flags to be like, yeah, if you see these, you might want to look for another job. Just saying.
Yeah, there's a Snapchat filter right now for red, green, and beige flags, just so everybody's aware. If you haven't used it yet. It's pretty funny. It's too bad we can't put it on our jobs.
I think other execs need to take a look at this, though. Like, I mean, those red flags, like, analyze why people are actually leaving and why they're thinking about it, right? And I've heard some data that seems to back up the fact that some organizations are saying, look, we're okay. Like, let's get a younger person in. Let's give somebody with less tenure the job. But your challenge is, like, they don't have the breadth of experience, the wisdom. They don't have the track record, right? So you're definitely making a trade-off for that. And I think you have to analyze whether it's the right trade-off for the business for some of these really high-risk decisions.
Yeah. You think about it, Frank. I think in September this year, it will be 30 years. Okay. I mean, there's not many people there might be a few more out there that are like 35, 40 years, but what's happening is this experience that we've gained over the past 30 plus years, if we all start to leave the industry, there's a lot of knowledge going out the door with us.
100% going down the drain.
Yeah.
That's a big risk.
It's a huge risk. Yeah. Next article, how to bake cyber resilience into your startup culture. I found this article really interesting because I love the startup world. As you guys know, I've done a lot of startups, and I was like, ooh, wait a minute. Yes. How do you build this in from day one? So this is actually some HBR authors that wrote a book on how to do this. So it was really interesting.
It made me laugh a little bit. While I can appreciate the nostalgia of going back to backups on tape, or leveraging thumb drives, there is a lot of business risk to doing that as well. That's the reason why things progressed, right? The reason why tape backups don't exist anymore is because there was a quality issue. Listen, I was part of the Symantec team when Veritas got acquired, and I saw the stuff that came out of that, right? There were some issues with recovery off of tape. So, I don't know. There's risk, right? So we're going to tell everybody put their data on thumb drives. That was one of the things that was in this article, thumb drives. What do social engineers do to test, the security of an organization? They drop a thumb drive in the parking lot that says, salaries of executives, and people pick it up and plug it in. I don't think going old school is the answer. Sorry.
No, and I think the technology's evolved. I remember the old Veritas days and all the tape backup and Commvault. I saw Commvault like 4 or 5 months ago. They're at an event. I'm like, I didn't even know you guys still existed.
Right. But I mean the backup exec in the net backup days where you had the tape libraries and you'd be taking the tapes off site. And then, 4 out of the 5 tapes in the library, you couldn't restore full.
Yeah.
Because you just kept overwriting them and overwriting them and overwriting them and never replacing them. I mean,
I think a big thing for any organization, but especially in the startup realm, is understanding what you should and shouldn't outsource. What needs to be something that is a core skill set that you have internally, and what can you outsource to the best of breed that you're the best that you can afford, and be able to manage that. And so the skill set that you need for your CISO and others in cybersecurity can be different based on the answer to those questions.
Yeah.
Agreed.
I think the big thing for us was we do our annual tabletops. We test those plans every year. We improve them. We make them better. Like the takeaway for me is you got to do that early on. And build your plans, test your plans, learn from your plans. Every year we do it, there's something new we learn that we're like, wait, who's our account rep for this software, right? Or how do we handle this? Like it creates muscle memory. You talk about this a lot, Jason, right? We need that muscle memory. And the best way to do that to me is test these plans. It's great that you buy cyber insurance and you back up however you back up. But you got to test this stuff and make sure that it actually does what you think it's going to do
100%.
When you're in that crisis.
Yeah, I mean, testing is key to be able to respond and be able to react to anything that comes your way. But the other piece for me is the proactive piece of where it needs to be basically just baked into the DNA of the culture. Because cultures talk about customer service and baking customer service skills into their culture. Why can't we bake this into our culture? And just make sure. Yeah, I've said it before. You're winning when you have interns who raise their hand and say, I think I found something. Right? That's winning. That is winning because now it's baked into the culture of the organization to be able to identify risk, be able to raise your hand and shine some light on the risk that's coming into the organization. Yeah. So just making it part of that daily motion, just like, being a fiduciary within the organization. You don't want to be wasting money. Department heads and managers, right? You're spending money wisely. Customer service. Bake this in as one of those core things that you just do.
Yep, absolutely. Next article, cybersecurity leadership development, building future leaders. I didn't see anything new in here. I mean, we cover a lot of this on a weekly basis, so nothing new.
This one smelled of AI to me. I don't know. I don't know
Me
if
too.
anybody else has a take, but
Me
it
too.
definitely had a little sense of AI written to me.
Interesting.
A lot of buzzwords and high level things that are just talked about.
Yeah, it's only a 3-minute read, so it had to be AI generated, right?
Maybe.
Well, it was interesting. It talked a lot about, going to being a cybersecurity leader from the non-technical track, but didn't address from the technical track.
Yeah.
Right.
And the other thing that kind of cued me in too is it's one of those high level media hype things where it says, mentorship and leadership pipelines are the only way to get global talent, the global talent shortage. That's what kind of keyed me in. I'm like, wait a minute. Have you been around the last year and a half or so? Because let me tell you, the rifts that are happening in the industry right now, this is not relevant.
Yeah.
No, there's no global talent shortage. Sorry. Nope. You may not want to hire them, but that's not because there's a shortage.
That's right.
Different problem. All right. Last article. This was the one that I thought was really interesting. Are legacy metrics derailing your transformation? Now, this gets into moving away from some of the old traditional metrics into, I think it's called project-based metrics. Project-driven. But what was interesting here is kind of in the quantum discussion we had earlier, like how do we measure success here, right? You said it, I think it was you, Jason. It's like, this isn't a one-time project and we're done, right? This is something we have to think about. And what I found interesting was these kind of project-driven, these future-focused things that we measure differently than we've been measuring in the past, right? And it got me thinking about KPIs and how do we build kind of future-proof metrics to track success against.
See, I take a little bit of a different stance. Yes, I think we need to update our metrics to be more value-driven, right? I agree with that wholeheartedly. But I do not feel that we have to do that at the cost of the legacy metrics. Here's a perfect example why. One of the project-driven metrics they talk about is decision velocity. If I make decisions quick, that's great. But what if I'm making poor decisions on poor data, right? What if we're making bad decision after bad decision after bad decision, but they're quick? We have decision velocity, right? We cannot negate the traditional metrics of looking at, our utilization, our margin, our profit. Like, we have to be looking at those traditional metrics to run the business. In combination, that's great. Are we making good business decisions with velocity? Awesome, we're on a good track. But if we're making bad decisions just quickly, that's horrible. You're not going to be a business in 2 years.
I agree with you, Jason. I found, did you go ahead and finish your thought?
Go ahead.
I was going to say in this one, the thing that I didn't like about it is they started strong with this whole transformation era, right? Like and then they started talking about project-driven things. And I'm like, that's a little bit strange. Like, it was a weird dichotomy to me. Yep. And then I went right where Jason went. And to me, it's less about changing all of your metrics or them holding us back to the right altitude of metrics for the right audience.
Yeah.
Because I still need to talk about those things that Jason's talking about with the team, right?
As a business, we need to be talking about those things. Like, that can't just disappear from the business. Listen, unicorns and rainbows are beautiful. They're lovely, but they're not going to keep my business afloat.
Right. Yeah.
The reason I'm interested in kind of re-evaluating those metrics is it's the value, it's the outcome side of this, right? When I sit down and, I have conversations with partners and clients and prospects, we got all this great technology that we've built over the years. And at the end of the day, it's all about, so what? What can I do with it? What's the outcome? I was actually on a call this morning with a prospect that, we're demonstrating all this really advanced AI capability. And then he's like, well, hold on. Like, but what do I show my executive team? Right.
I think that makes the point to what we're talking about, Matt. This totally makes the point. And here's why. Let me explain why. One of the other, and it rang a bell to me. One of the other one was about productivity, right? That they talked about. And are our key people focused on high impact work? The answer to that could be yes, but it's 1 hour a day. Right? They're only working on high impact stuff 1 hour a day. What we want is the combination of maximum utilization on high impact work. That's what we want.
Yep.
So that's kind of where I went with this article when I saw it. Like the thing it brought me back to is there's a lot of organizations where I've seen from a security standpoint where people talk about products. They don't talk about capabilities and deliverables, right? Like, what is the intent? What are we trying to achieve out of this? And I think from a metric side, what I've seen far too often is metrics for more metrics' sake.
Right.
And my question is, like, what's the value of the metric? And if there's no value to the metric, if we're just measuring something, but I'm not getting a business value out of it, why am I wasting time delivering a metric? Why am I doing something else that actually matters? And so what I want to see out of here is some way to measure, is what you're measuring actually aligned to business outcome and capabilities? Yeah. And if that's the case, you're doing a great job no matter what the metrics are, legacy or transformational, right? Like, I just want to see that you're deriving value from what we're spending time collecting.
I completely agree with you there, Ben. And this even starts, a lot of organizations around this time of year, well, it's all over the map, but, you go through like performance reviews with people of what they did last year. Listen to how many times when you're in a room, like you're doing calibration exercises or talking about it, and people will say, wow, she worked really hard. She's a hard worker. She does all this work. He works so hard. It's not about how hard they having an impact on the things that the business needs. Right. And we do it with people. We do it with the work that we're doing, the projects that we're doing. So you're exactly right. We have to lower the ratio, that signal to noise ratio of hard work to impact. Or
work
outputs
smarter,
to
not
outcomes.
harder.
But you need both sides of these metrics.
You need both of them.
Do that. Right?
That's right.
Because they're highly utilized on a high impact activity. Because you could be doing high impact activity, but I'm playing golf for 7 hours, and then I'm doing my high impact for an hour.
Yeah.
How long are you golfing for?
7 hours.
7 hours.
It's only 9 holes.
That's a long round. Jason.
Well, the 19th hole takes about 3 hours.
Okay, now you're perfectly in line. 4 hours to golf, 3 hours to drink. I'm with you. Okay. Oh, always a pleasure. Thank you for joining me. Thank you, everyone, for watching and listening. We'll see you next week on Business Security Weekly.